it can be really easy to rush into marking. You might be excited to see what your students have written. You might be wanting to get it out of the way, or you might have other marking coming in. But what happens is the marking hits your inbox and straight away you're starting to get into it. But what you'll notice is that very quickly you start to become inefficient. You might find that you have to go back to previous papers to remark. You might be going back to the question to remind yourself of wording. You might be going back to the rubric or back to some of the commonly asked questions. So the first 5 to 10 scripts will take you a long time to just acclimatize to. And in this video, I'm going to give you advice on 2 things that you can do that will make it a much easier process and make you much more accurate at the start of the marking period. The first one is to design yourself a crib sheet before you start marking, and you can do this before the marking hits your inbox. And this is going to be normally a 1 to 2 page document I create. And that 1 to 2 page document summarizes everything that I need to remember about the question that's been set. So it's going to include the title of the brief. It's going to include any FAQs. It's going to include any of those commonly asked student questions. It's going to include any notes that have come from module team meetings. And it's also going to include the marking rubric and the marking criteria. All of these things are going to exist on your VLE or on your hard drive, but they're all going to be scattered out in various different places. So do yourself a favor, and before you start marking, collect them all into one document. So then when you've got any questions, you can just come back to that one place. Saves you going back and forth, and it's going to save you a lot of time. And you can also reuse that in subsequent years. So the first thing is, instead of rushing in, make yourself a crib sheet so you can keep referring back to those commonly asked questions and other information. And the second point is to think about a bank of comments that you might have in advance. So normally when we first start marking a particular batch of work, it takes us a long time to write those comments at the start because we're kind of refamiliarizing ourselves with what we're marking and what the criteria is and what the question is. So in advance of those essays and assessments hitting your inbox, start to create yourself a bank of just really generic comments and the sorts of areas that you might comment on with student work. So these are going to be skeletons. These aren't going to be things that you copy and paste straight through to every time. You want to make sure that they're bespoke to each particular student, but have certain things that you might comment on for each of those scripts. So, for example, we might have what you would comment on in an introduction, might be around signposting and might be around the overall argument. What are you going to comment on in relation to the theory that's used by the student? Probably it's going to be about depth and breadth. What are you going to comment on with analysis, about the quality of examples and the quantity of examples? With evaluation, it's going to be about the quality of their discussion and their ability to compare and contrast. With the presentation of the work, it might be how well they're referencing or how well they're structuring. But what this does is it just helps you to be able to see into that essay right from that first one about the sorts of things you should be commenting on. Otherwise, you're going to be generating over those first 10 scripts, that bank of comments, you're going to be spending a lot of time with each one. So once again, this bank isn't for you just to copy and paste the comments across, but it's just to start off your thinking so you're already focused before you begin. So these are 2 documents that you can prepare in advance of marking to make sure that as soon as those scripts hit your inbox, you are fully prepared.